They told me not to show up at Mom's birthday. No explanation. Just silence. That silence was louder than any slap. I stood in my kitchen, the autumn light casting long shadows on the marble countertops, painting the cabinets in a soft amber glow. Outside, New York pulsed and moved indifferent to my ache. I glanced at the unopened stack of mail from Boston, the corner of a thick manila envelope poking out as if daring me to remember what I'd been avoiding. But right now, I couldn't look at it. Not yet. 10 years ago, I walked out of that house to escape the weight of their expectations, the measuring stick of my father's voice always reminding me that Sophie was the one who fit. I made something of myself brick by damn brick. Claire Walsh, CEO, investor name on panels, clients on waiting lists. Yet a single line in my inbox could reduce all that to dust. The email was short, dry, clinical. Dad said it's best if you don't come to Mom's birthday this year. That was it. No apology. No context. Just Sophie, doing what she does best, delivering poison with a polished smile. My mother didn't even write it. Didn't call. Nothing. I pressed the screen, watching the words disappear into digital nothingness, but their sting lingered. How many times had I told myself I didn't care, that I was free now, unshackled from their judgment? Yet here I was, staring at the sink as if it could offer comfort. The wine glass from last night still sat in the basin, a faint lipstick stain clinging to the rim. Red. Just like the rage quietly simmering in my chest. Alyssa's voice startled me. She'd slipped in while I was lost in thought like she always did, ghost quiet but eyes sharp as razors. They finally sent something she asked, glancing at the laptop. I gave a half shrug. Just a message. One line. Sophie said, "I'm not welcome." She arched a brow but didn't speak. I added, "I guess Dad thinks it's best if I don't come." Did he say it himself? No. Sophie did. She waited a moment. Then, sometimes silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's leverage. I turned toward her. Her tone wasn't accusatory, just observant. Alyssa rarely inserted herself into my personal life unless she knew the stakes. And she knew them now. Every missed call. Every unopened card. Every snub at a family wedding, a charity gala, and awards night. I walked toward the pile of mail on the counter. Thick. Official. From Boston. The city I'd avoided like a phantom limb, still aching, though it was long gone from my life. I peeled the manila envelope open. Inside was a folded estate notice. My grandmother's name, Margaret Walsh, was typed at the top in dignified serif font. She'd passed 2 months ago. I hadn't been told. Of course I hadn't. I only found out through a friend's social media post tucked between photos of summer vacations and engagement rings. I scanned the first few lines of the letter. Notice to beneficiaries. Margaret Walsh Trust. Pertaining to revisions filed under sealed codicil. I stopped reading. Not because I didn't care, but because suddenly I did. Margaret. She was the only one who ever looked me in the eye without comparing me to Sophie. She taught me how to play chess, how to negotiate at antique auctions, how to sharpen my tongue without raising my voice. My father hated that bond. Said I was turning calculating. I never corrected him. Alyssa stood across from me, still silent. I looked down at the estate document, then at the dimming Manhattan skyline. Something shifted inside me. Not fury, not grief, but something colder, clearer. The kind of silence that came before a hurricane. I walked over to my desk, deleted the email from Sophie, and whispered into the air. If they don't want me there, they'll regret the reason why. She books a one-way ticket to Boston. Quiet war has begun. I didn't need a seat at their table. I'd come to flip the whole damn table over. The iron gates of the Walsh estate creaked open like reluctant arms groaning beneath the weight of years and judgment. The driveway was flanked by trees, their leaves burning gold and copper, fluttering down like confetti over a ceremony I hadn't been invited to. The car slowed as I stared ahead at the mansion's stone glass manicured hedges trimmed to perfection. Cold perfection. Sterile wealth, as clinical as my father's praise. I stepped out in silence. The gravel crunched beneath my heels, sharp and deliberate. I didn't expect anyone to greet me, and I wasn't wrong. I rang the bell. The door opened, not with warmth, but the vacuum of surprise. Claire. My mother's voice barely formed my name as if it might shatter on her tongue. She stood there in her beige cashmere cardigan, eyes wide but unsure. I thought I'd come say, "Happy birthday," I said, smiling just enough to unnerve her. She stepped back. Of course, of course. Come in." The air inside was colder than the October wind. Clean floors, abstract art, polished stair rails that had once echoed with the sounds of our teenage fights. I glanced toward the hallway, half expecting to see Sophie appear like a ghost in pastel. Instead, Robert came first. My father's expression, taut and unimpressed, didn't even shift. "You didn't tell us you were coming," he said flatly. I returned his stare. "It's Mom's birthday. I figured family shows up for that." Before he could reply, Sophie emerged from the living room, a glass of white wine in hand and a grin that gleamed with faux surprise. "Well, look who defied instructions," she said sweetly. "Claire, you look successful." My jaw tensed. "Thanks. You too. I see you've mastered copy-paste." She tilted her head, amused. "Oh, you mean the expansion plan? It's doing wonders. We even landed the Concord account." I smiled. "That's impressive. I remember writing that pitch deck in 2016. Didn't think it would survive this long." Her smile flickered just for a second. We walked into the main room where the long dining table had already been set. 12 chairs, 3 of which I knew would never accommodate me. I scanned the room instinctively, looking for mine. There wasn't one. I sat anyway. Dinner passed in slow agony. Robert controlled the conversation with firm economic sentences, speaking mostly to Sophie about market trends and boardroom politics. My mother chimed in now and then with questions about the weather, or whether I'd found time to rest, as if rest were a sign of defeat. Across from me sat Daniel, Sophie's latest project. He looked like the kind of man who wore perfectly tailored suits, but never told anyone he went to therapy. Handsome, composed, but strangely aware. Unlike the others, he didn't look through me. He looked at me. Like he was listening. "You've been quiet," he said halfway through dinner, directing it at me. Robert jumped in before I could answer. "Claire's always been quiet when she has nothing to show." I laughed low and sharp. "Oh, I have plenty to show, but not all of us need a round of applause to feel valid." Sophie leaned in with a faux concerned pout. "We just worry. I mean, rumors in the industry say your firm's plateaued. Is everything okay?" There it was, the familiar blade under the silk. "Business is fine," I replied calmly. "But I understand why you'd be interested. You've been shadowing me for years." A chuckle escaped Daniel. A real one. Sophie's eyes narrowed. Then Robert decided to punctuate it. "You were always good at ambition, not results." That sting sat in the air like a curse. I felt my mother flinch beside me but say nothing. She reached for the teapot awkwardly and poured me a cup into my old mug, a white ceramic one with a faded navy stripe near the rim, chipped along the handle. I stared at it for a long time before lifting it, a shrine built with broken things. After dinner, I stepped out to the garden, trying to breathe past the storm in my chest. The lights from the dining room spilled onto the lawn behind me, and I could hear Sophie laughing, loud, deliberate, territorial. I didn't turn around when I heard footsteps approaching. I didn't have to. "You handled that better than I would have," Daniel said. I glanced sideways. "You think so?" He nodded. "I've worked in plenty of boardrooms. I know when someone's playing defense." "You mean Sophie?" "I mean everyone in there. Except you." I looked at him fully then. His eyes weren't flirting. They were scanning, deciphering. "I know who you really are," he said quietly. Then he added, "And I didn't come here for Sophie. There's a difference between being forgotten and being erased." My father preferred the latter. The revolving glass doors of Walsh & Coas whispered as they spun me inward back into the cathedral of my own undoing. Marble floors stretched like judgment, clean and cold. A faint citrus polish smell clung to the air, too sharp to be welcoming. I walked slowly through the lobby, my heels echoing louder than they should have, like every step was a provocation. The receptionist, a new face, looked up from her desk with trained pleasantness, then faltered as her eyes processed my presence. She hesitated, glanced at her screen, and then back to me. "I'm here to see my father," I said, with a thin smile. A pause. Then a soft nod. "Of course. Please take a seat." I didn't. I walked straight toward the elevator, the same one I used to ride every morning at 7:42 a.m. sharp. The brass trim had been replaced with sleeker aluminum. A metaphor, maybe. Everything new, but cheaper somehow. On the 20th floor, the view was as staggering as ever, Boston's skyline stretching toward the harbor cranes, dotting the horizon like question marks. The boardroom doors were open, light spilling across the hallway carpet. I paused at the threshold. Inside, Sophie was standing at the head of the table, clicker in hand, blazer crisp and tailored. She smiled as she gestured toward a slide color-coded chart's bullet points lined with precision. Familiar colors. Familiar font. And then I saw it, my strategic alignment matrix, down to the italicized footnote. I walked in slowly as conversation stumbled into silence. Claire Sophie said without missing a beat. "Didn't expect you here today." "I miss the smell of recycled ambition," I replied. She smiled like a cat after breaking something valuable, glowing. "Robert didn't look at me." "We're in a meeting." "I can see that." "Carry on. I'll observe." I took a seat near the far end, far from where I used to sit. No one objected, but I caught the flicker of unease in two senior partners' eyes. Old allies too cowardly to nod. Sophie continued the presentation, weaving around terms like forward leverage and brand verticals, sprinkling just enough jargon to disguise the fact that none of it was hers. I watched the board nod, enthralled. Robert tapped his pen against his notepad, pleased. Then Sophie gestured toward the door where Daniel stood, hands in his pockets. "We've recently engaged an external advisor to help guide integration strategy. Some of you may already know Daniel Brooks from the tech sphere." Applause. A few chuckles. Daniel nodded politely, but his eyes flicked toward me for half a second, apology or warning, I wasn't sure. I leaned back in my chair, arms folded, calm, detached, until my phone vibrated. Alyssa. She'd been quiet since I landed, keeping a low profile per my request. But now her name glowed on my screen along with a text and a zip file. "Claire. Clean versions of your 2017 decks. Metadata intact. Password your mother's favorite flower." I tapped the link, opened the first document. Same template. Same timeline. Strategy Initiative New England Expansion. Author Claire Walsh. Dated April 3, 2017. I stared at the screen, the lines of text sharpening into blades. In the room, Sophie answered a question with a well-rehearsed laugh. Robert leaned back with a satisfied grunt. Someone poured water. I closed the file, stood and walked out. The elevator doors slid closed with a sigh. Daniel stepped in just before they met, silent beside me. "You didn't say anything?" he murmured. "I didn't need to." A pause. Then he turned, eyes focused. "She's building her throne with your bricks." I let the words settle. Truth always carried a certain gravity when spoken plainly. Back at street level, I emerged into the autumn light and took a long breath. My reflection in the lobby glass looked steady, confident, but beneath it a storm stirred with purpose. I pulled out my phone and opened a fresh message to Alyssa. "I want everything. Pull all their filings from Q1 to now. Discreetly. Revenge isn't loud. It's whispered in boardrooms and signed in ink. The saxophone murmured in the corner of my office, a lazy Coltrane solo wrapping itself around the moody shadows cast by the city's waning light. Outside the windows, Manhattan blinked indifferently. I sat behind my walnut desk sleeves rolled, sipping lukewarm Earl Grey that had long lost its fight against bitterness. On the screen spreadsheets, dozens. Expense reports, vendor ledgers, audit logs. I wasn't looking for red flags, I was counting them. Alyssa sat opposite me, half buried in a sea of printed quarterly filings from Walsh & Co. Her hair was pulled back, glasses perched low. Every so often she'd mutter something under her breath, circle a line, and slide the paper over. It had become our rhythm. I scanned each marked-up page with clinical detachment, but beneath that rage, cool and surgical. "See this one," she said, tapping a line item. $84,000 for strategic consulting. Q3. No corresponding report, no notes. Vendor address is a mailbox in Newark. I nodded, and 2 weeks later, Sophie was made head of domestic strategy. Alyssa raised an eyebrow. Coincidence? I smiled faintly. My family doesn't believe in coincidences, only cover stories. The call came through at 6:17 p.m. I muted the music and answered. The voice on the other end was familiar, slow, deliberate. My old CPA contact. We'd never met in person. I liked it that way. "I'm risking a lot taking this call, Claire. Then don't waste time." A pause. Then paper shuffled in the background. "There are irregularities in the Q2 and Q3 filings. Off-books disbursements mirrored expense allocations and invoice stacking, basic stuff but sloppy. Whoever's doing it thinks no one's watching. They're right. No one is. Yet." He sighed. "There's a shell vendor linked to an account in the Caymans. White Shore Analytics. Legit registered, yes. Real, no. What's worse, guess whose name is on the incorporation documents?" I leaned forward, pulse quiet but quickening. "Say it." "Daniel Brooks. Listed as strategic advisor. Signed with a Boston address." I didn't speak for a few seconds. Just let the silence sit. "Want me to send it?" he asked. "Encrypted. Same key." He hung up without goodbye. Old habits. I looked at Alyssa, who had been silently watching me, waiting. "Daniel," I said. "Just the name." She tilted her head. He could be the front. Or the architect. She stood cross to the printer and returned with another document, email threads between Sophie and the dismissed accounts team lead. Buried in corporate jargon was a phrase that caught my eye, per directive from strategic oversight. The same language appeared in 4 other budget memos, all issued after Daniel started consulting. "We're missing something," I murmured. Alyssa pulled up a shared spreadsheet timeline mapping every promotion Sophie received against anomalies in budget approvals, contractor inflows, and stock shifts. It was a perfect slope. Every upward move corresponded with money disappearing somewhere else. I stared at it like a painting, a portrait of fraud in rising lines and soft-colored cells. "Want the whistleblower list?" Alyssa asked. I nodded. She read aloud 2 former staffers. 1, Linda Evers, fired last year for data integrity violations. The other, Kevin Darnell, quit after a closed-door meeting with Sophie and Robert. "Let's start with Kevin," I said. "Track him. Quietly." She opened her laptop, fingers already in motion. Then the printer hissed again. Another file. Another lie wrapped in ink. Alyssa picked it up and frowned. Fake invoice dated July. Marketing campaign that never existed. White Shore Analytics again. She turned the page, lips parting slightly. Signed off by Daniel Brooks. The name felt like a pin pulled from a grenade. She placed the paper in front of me. "If you use this, he burns too." I stared at the page, then leaned back, my fingers steepled against my lips. "Then he should choose carefully. You don't win wars by shouting. You win them by letting your enemy underestimate you." The bell above the door chimed as I stepped into the small Boston coffeehouse tucked between a pharmacy and an insurance office, just another forgotten storefront with chipped awnings and handwritten chalkboard specials. It smelled like burnt espresso and old wood, and that suited me just fine. The back room was dim-curtained off from the main area by a sliding glass door smudged with fingerprints. Quiet. Secluded. Forgotten. Alyssa was already there, seated at the farthest table. She had ordered for me a black Americano no sugar and pushed it toward me without a word. Her eyes flicked to the man sitting across from her, then back to mine. He looked tired. The kind of tired that seeps into bone after too many months spent jobless, reputation frayed by whispers you can't answer. His fingers trembled slightly around his cup. He didn't stand when I approached, just nodded once. "Ms. Walsh?" he said, voice gravel and regret. "Thanks for meeting me." I sat. "You worked it." He nodded again. 4 years. Network security, archiving systems, compliance mirrors. His eyes darted toward the curtained glass. "I was let go last December. Sophie said I was restructuring collateral." Alyssa gave a soft scoff. What she meant, he continued, was that I backed up the wrong emails. He slid a slim flash drive across the table. I didn't touch it, not yet. "What's on it?" "Internal threads. Finance directors asking for retrodated memos. Sophie instructing legal to fast-track filings without proper review. But this," he tapped the drive. "This is different." He leaned forward, voice lowering. "There's evidence of pre-earnings trades made through Daniel Brooks's shell accounts days before quarterly disclosures. They used VPN relays and deleted the mailboxes, but I mirrored the backup server before I was locked out." I stared at the drive, heartbeat steady. "Why bring this to me?" He met my gaze for the first time. "Because she didn't just ruin my job. She blacklisted me across the industry. I haven't had a single callback in 8 months. I have a daughter. I need my name back." I nodded once, then took the drive and slipped it into the inside pocket of my coat. Alyssa stood. "We'll handle it from here." He gave a soft, grateful smile, then left without another word. The door chimed again, then silence. I sipped my coffee. It was lukewarm now. Bitter. Just how I liked it. Alyssa broke the quiet. "It's more than enough for a federal inquiry. SEC would jump at this." I didn't respond right away. Instead, I pulled out my phone. A new message from Daniel. "We need to talk." Not as Sophie's boyfriend. I stared at it for a long moment. "Do you trust him?" Alyssa asked. I shook my head. "I don't trust anyone who can kiss the snake and call it love." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Then why not cut him loose? Because snakes shed skin," I murmured. "Sometimes they slither back with different intentions." She tilted her head. "You think he flipped? I think he's starting to realize the house he helped build is already on fire." I looked back toward the door where the former IT manager had left. His words stayed with me, not the accusations, not even the technical details. Just the plea beneath them: "I want my name back." And suddenly, something shifted in me. This wasn't just revenge. This wasn't about dinner table slights or childhood wounds that festered in silence. It was bigger. Sophie hadn't just tried to erase me. She'd destroyed careers, lives, futures. She'd used my ideas to climb and then set fire to the ladder behind her. Justice wasn't just overdue. It was necessary. I stood. Alyssa watched as I pulled a thick folder from my bag and placed it on the table. Its label was Simple Walsh Disclosure Protocol. Phase 1. She raised an eyebrow. "Is this?" I nodded. "Timeline evidence links anonymized affidavits. Phase 2 will involve federal filings." A beat of silence. So she said, voice quiet, steady, "We're doing this." I met her gaze. "It's time to move from defense to offense." She opens a folder titled Walsh Disclosure Protocol, Phase 1. There's a moment when silence shifts from survival to strategy. I'd reached it. The conference room was cold, Not from the temperature, but from the weight of what we were about to do. 3 walls were lined with files, printouts, email chains, and blown-up screenshots arranged with surgical precision. On the far wall, a corkboard mapped out everything: red pins for betrayals, blue for financial fraud, black for open threats. A chessboard sat in the middle of the table, pieces mid-game, white queen flanked, black king exposed. Erica Barnes sat across from me, crisp blazer, unblinking eyes. She hadn't said much in the last hour. Just read. Line after line, date after date. Her former SEC badge was still tucked into her wallet, and I could feel its weight in the room. Alyssa sat to my right, typing at a controlled rhythm. Her laptop fed into the room's main screen right now, showing the latest scanned invoice Ethan had provided. Misspelled vendor name, offshore account dates lining up perfectly with Sophie's sudden department optimizations. Ethan sat at the far corner, shoulders hunched. He looked less like a whistleblower and more like someone awaiting sentence. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I didn't blame him. Finally, Erica spoke. "This is good," she said. "More than good. With this, if released strategically, the SEC could initiate a corporate audit within 48 hours. Ethan shifted, knuckles whitening on his coffee cup. "She'll bury me," he muttered. "If she finds out it came from me, she already suspects you," Alyssa said gently. "You're just the loose end she couldn't burn in time." He looked at me, then fear and something like apology flickering behind his eyes. "I don't want money," he said. "I just want a job again. A clean record." "You'll have it," I replied. "But this isn't just about her anymore." I turned back to Erica. "If we go public, what happens to me?" She didn't sugarcoat it. "You'll be implicated. They'll dig into your past connections to the company. You'll be cross-examined. Media will paint you as bitter, vengeful. It won't be kind." I breathed in slowly, letting the truth settle. "Good," I said. "Let them see it all." Alyssa stopped typing. Erica leaned back. "I hope you're ready," Erica said, voice softening for the first time. "Because this ends careers." "No," I said. "This exposes theft." A buzz from my phone broke the stillness. A new message from Daniel. "You're not the only one being watched." I showed it to Alyssa. She frowned. "He's either warning you," she said, "or playing both sides." I turned back to the timeline on the wall. Red, blue, black. Every color bleeding into the next. This wasn't just a legal case, it was a reckoning. "We escalate," I said. "Press brief by end of next week. But only after the first audit request is filed anonymously." Erica nodded. "We'll stage it in layers. Controlled release. Let them sweat before they burn." Alyssa's fingers flew over the keyboard again, opening the encryption program, uploading Ethan's packet to the secured archive. But then she froze. What I asked. She didn't answer right away, just turned her laptop so I could see. On the screen, a new message glowed against the dark interface. No sender name. No traceable IP, just a pulsing block of text. "We know what you're doing. Stop. Fear isn't the enemy, it's the compass." And it pointed me right back to them. The rain turned Boston streets into slick, glistening veins under street lamps, and I followed one of them into the heart of the financial district. The bar was tucked into a brownstone, barely marked, its sign long faded. Inside, a slow jazz number bled from an old upright piano, and shadows danced across the candlelit tables. It smelled of aged whiskey and resignation, perfect. Mason Clark was already seated in the back booth, nursing a drink that had long stopped sweating. His once sharp Wall Street Journal features had a reputation for cutting too close to the truth. He hadn't published a piece in 8 years. "Claire Walsh," he said, as I slid into the booth. "You must really want a fire lit if you came to me." "I want it slow," I replied, laying my bag on the seat beside me. "Controlled. Surgical." He arched an eyebrow. "Not your first time setting charges, huh?" I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled out the USB drive, A copy of Ethan's documents, carefully redacted names, masked amounts blurred just enough to spark suspicion, but not draw legal action. Not yet. He held it between two fingers like it might burn. And this is enough, I said to start a conversation. No accusations, just questions. He whistled low. You always did have a taste for precision. That took me back to college where I'd interned at his desk for a single summer. He remembered my coffee order better than my birthday. But what stuck most was what he'd said to me the day he was fired. If you bleed truth too quickly, the sharks don't even wait. I looked down at the glass he'd ordered for me. Neat bourbon, unspoken memory. You sure this won't blow back on you? He asked. I'm counting on it, I said. He gave me a long look, then cracked the tiniest smile. Been a decade since someone handed me a blade this sharp. I don't need a warhead, I said. Just a whisper in the right ear. We sat for a beat, the music swelling. Then he leaned forward, voice low. Redacted or not, this rattles cages. How do you want me to frame it? Rumor, I said. Alleged discrepancies at Walsh & Kober, unnamed source. Phrase it like the market's uneasy investors always listen to that. He nodded. I can work with that. Give it a soft open. The rest'll unravel on its own. As he pocketed the drive, I felt the weight shift inside me. Not relief. Not yet. But motion. The kind of inertia you only get after years of stillness. You ever miss it? I asked. The power of truth. He didn't hesitate. Every goddamn day. I smiled, really smiled for the first time in weeks. Outside, the rain had softened to a drizzle. I stood there for a moment, letting it kiss my face, washing off the residue of memory. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Alyssa article drops at 7 a.m. EST. I've got alert set. I replied with a single word, ready. But before I could pocket the phone, another notification flashed a tweet. I didn't follow Sophie's assistant, but it was trending. Miss Lane XO. Not all traitors are outside the house. My stomach flipped. Inside the house. They knew. Or suspected. The difference was narrowing fast. I looked back through the bar window. Mason was gone. Only the empty glass remained sweating again under the candlelight. The storm had officially begun. They thought I was bleeding. I was just sharpening the knife. The Walsh & Comer boardroom hadn't changed in 20 years. Everything in it had. The glass table gleamed like an altar. The floor-to-ceiling windows devoured the late morning sun. Even the coffee Sumatra roast, precisely 185 degrees, was a calculated display of sterile power, but beneath the polished tension pooled like smoke. I sat near the corner, technically a guest, legally a shareholder, emotionally an exile. Sophie was at the head wearing her favorite navy dress that said stable while her hands betrayed the tremor in her wrist. Robert stood like a statue, leaning slightly forward as he addressed the board. We're facing an orchestrated smear campaign, he said, voice crisp. Anonymous leaks, speculative headlines, none of it substantiated. We must stay focused. The board members nodded, but I noticed the subtle shifts: a cough from Ms. Levitt, a tap of pen from Harding. Small rebellions, seeds of doubt. Sophie jumped in. We're conducting a full internal audit, of course. But make no mistake, this is external sabotage. And we believe, she glanced in my direction, that someone with access to legacy information might be feeding the narrative. It was laughable. The language, the posture, the might be all designed to look innocent while aiming to wound. Afterward, as the board filed out, Daniel lingered. Sophie caught his sleeve. We need to make a statement, she hissed. Discredit Claire before this spirals. You know the press. You know what they'll believe. Daniel didn't respond right away. He looked down, lips pressed into a line. I'll think about it. Her eyes narrowed. Think faster. I waited by the elevator. He joined me without a word. We descended in silence until we reached the garage-level conference room I'd reserved an hour earlier. I closed the door behind us. She's unraveling, he said finally, blaming interns, staging calls. This morning, she snapped at the CFO in front of 3 analysts. I studied his face lines, deeper voice, lower. This wasn't just guilt. It was fear. "She's going to drag me down with her," he said. I tapped the tablet on the table and hit play. It was Sophie's voice, clipped and rehearsed. "If asked, we'll say Daniel oversaw those departments. We trusted him. He let us down. We had no knowledge." Daniel flinched. "She recorded that last week," I said. "Ran it twice. Smiled both times." He looked sick. "She told me I was the only one she trusted." I stepped closer. "Still think she loves you?" He didn't answer, just stared at the wall behind me like it might offer a simpler truth. "What do you want from me?" he asked finally. I kept my voice steady. "The truth." That night at 11:47 p.m., a folder hit my encrypted Dropbox. No message, no subject line, just the title, Internal Counsel, Walsh Conflicts. You don't kill a beast by yelling at it. You drain its blood and wait. By the time I walked into my office, the damage had already begun. The digital storm had arrived, overnight floods of emails with subject lines like "comment on the allegations" and "Claire Walsh response requested." Google alerts lit up my screen: "Claire Walsh under scrutiny for past financial impropriety at Walsh & Co. Headlines without evidence, just enough venom to poison. Alyssa was already there, expression grim, holding her phone like it might explode. Sophie's PR firm just dropped a campaign. 3 press releases, 2 op-eds, and a coordinated Twitter smear. They're calling you the invisible embezzler. I scanned the articles. The language was surgical. No direct accusations, just questions loaded with implication. Did Claire Walsh misuse funds while consulting for her family's business? Was her sudden resignation a cover-up? 2 clients had already suspended contracts. One called it a temporary pause for optics. I sank into my chair, eyes dry but throat tight. My name, what I'd rebuilt from nothing, was now the target. Then my phone rang. Linda. I stared at the screen for a moment. She rarely called. I answered. "Hi." Her voice was soft, shaking. "Claire. Sweetie, I just read." "Oh, honey, what is happening?" I said nothing. "I know you're angry, but this war, it's too much. Families can't survive this kind of thing." Families. She always used that word like a bandage. "You should stop," she whispered, "before more damage is done." I closed my eyes. "Did Sophie ask you to call me a pause?" "Too long. She's just scared. Your father, too. This is tearing us apart." "Tearing me apart, you mean?" "I have to go," I said. "Claire, please." I hung up. I didn't cry. Not right away. Not until Alyssa gently placed a cup of tea beside me and sat across the desk without saying a word. I stared at the swirling steam until the tears came silent and burning. "She's willing to scorch the earth just to win," I murmured. Alyssa nodded. "Then we play her game. Smarter. Colder." I turned to my laptop, opened the encrypted folder Daniel had sent Internal Counsel. Walsh Conflicts. One by one, the files revealed damning memos, recorded compliance violations, and timelines meticulously sanitized by Sophie's hand. I attached the full archive in an email to Erica. Subject: now or never. She called 20 minutes later. "This," she breathed, "this changes everything. This isn't just fraud, it's organized concealment. Internal legal shielding, timeline manipulation, suppression of whistleblowers." I didn't say anything. "I can file today," she said. "It'll go straight to federal court. Sophie will be named first. Do it." And she did. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. The notification was short but sharp. "Subpoena filed, United States District Court Defendant Sophie Walsh." Every war has a turning point. Mine came in a plain envelope marked confidential. It was waiting on the table in the private legal suite we'd rented high above the Manhattan skyline, sealed in pale manila like any other piece of mundane bureaucracy. Except it wasn't. It weighed heavier than it looked. Inside it, the war shifted. Erica stood by the whiteboard, marker in hand, her hair pulled back in a no-nonsense twist. Every inch of the room spoke of battle plans, blueprints taped along the glass wall strings connecting names and dollar figures, timelines overlaid with red and black ink. Daniel was already seated, eyes tired, shoulders drawn inward like a man who'd run out of justifications. Alyssa leaned beside the coffee tray, silent, watching. I opened the envelope. Inside, a printout annotated and signed by a former accountant from Walsh & Kosar. It was damning. A separate ledger showing withdrawals from Linda Walsh's trust account over 5 years, unauthorized, rechanneled into shell vendors tied to Sophie. Layered beneath expense patterns matching the Cayman account we'd already flagged. Daniel spoke first. "She took from your mother," he said, voice dry. "Used your father's proxies to shield it. It started as a small misallocation, then grew. Linda never knew." I looked up slowly. "And you did?" "Not at first," he said. "But I helped set up the payment structures. I thought they were for tax offsets." Sophie was very good at lying, especially to me. He handed over a USB drive. "Everything I have, emails, password trails, timestamps." Erica's lips pressed into a thin line. "This is enough to trigger investigations on 3 fronts." She turned to the table and began arranging the documents. "I'll finalize the packet. We'll submit parallel disclosures to the SEC, IRS, and the Department of Justice. If they open concurrent audits, the dominoes will fall." A knock at the door. A tall man in a gray coat entered, unnamed, unreadable. A federal liaison. He reviewed the preliminary materials and said only, "You'll have their attention. But understand, once you press send, you're no longer a whistleblower. You're a threat. They'll come for you too." His eyes met mine with something colder than warning. It was certainty. When he left, the silence was thick. Erica slid the signature page toward me. I stared at it. My name already typed, waiting. I could walk away. Let the subpoena stand. Let the news keep burning. I'd already exposed enough. But then I remembered Robert's smirk that morning 10 years ago, the day he told me I was too unstable to remain in the company. The way he stood behind Sophie as if I'd never belonged. I picked up the pen. "Let's burn it all down." The pen scratched across the paper. "Final. Permanent." Erica nodded once. "Submission scheduled 7:00 a.m. Eastern. All 3 agencies will receive simultaneous drops." I leaned back. My heart didn't race. It settled. Alyssa's laptop pinged. "Boarding group called," she said. I rose, grabbing my coat. "Boston, Boston." Daniel stood too. "I'm coming with you." I didn't answer. The jet cut through dark skies, tracing the line between silence and detonation. As the wheels touched down, I glanced at my phone. 7:03 a.m. The screen blinked with a forwarded message from Erica to sophiewallshanco.com. Subject: notice of federal audit. SEC timestamp 7:02 a.m. They wanted a quiet scandal. I gave them a public reckoning. The tinted glass doors of Walsh & Coaster swung open at 8:55 a.m., just ahead of the scheduled emergency board meeting. I stepped inside, heels echoing across the marble. Alyssa flanked me with a leather case. Daniel walked a pace behind, silent and steady, a man already crossed to the other side. The receptionist's jaw tensed. Her eyes darted to the inner office. I said nothing. She buzzed us through. The boardroom smelled like panic masked with cologne, sharp, expensive, and futile. Around the table, the usual suspects waited: Robert at the head, Sophie at his right, legal counsel to his left, and 5 stone-faced board members trying to pretend this wasn't about to be scorched earth. I dropped the thick folder onto the center of the table. It landed with a satisfying thud. Robert didn't stand. "You weren't invited." I met his gaze. "Didn't need an invitation." "Security, I wouldn't." A new voice interrupted. It belonged to the company's general counsel, Meredith Kane. She was standing now, thin hands on the polished surface. "Federal audit order," she said, sliding the paper toward him. "They're not here for her." They're here for us. A beat of silence. Then I began to read. Between Q2 and Q4 of fiscal year 19, Walsh & Cooper's authorized payments totaling $3.2 million to entities registered offshore entities, with no delivery confirmations, no vendor histories, and overlapping addresses with shell companies linked to Sophie Walsh. Sophie's face lost color by degrees. Additionally, I continued voice unwavering internal emails indicate knowledge and concealment of these transactions, including one directive dated August 14th, explicitly requesting backup deletions. Robert stood now, his voice louder than it had a right to be. This is an ambush. A vendetta from a disgruntled Daniel rose beside me. I resign effective immediately, he said. Then he laid his own folder on the table. That contains every internal memo I was forced to redact under Sophie's instruction. Sophie turned to him, lips parted, betrayal all over her face. I stayed loyal, he said, voice brittle. Until you threw me to the wolves in a draft press statement. Whispers surged across the room like wind through dry leaves. Robert was turning red now, but Meredith cut him off with a single raised hand. The board will convene in executive session to review the material. Until then, I advise everyone to remain calm and silent. Sophie's jaw trembled. I watched it all, the crumbling image, the glass shard tension, the board members shifting in their seats. Then I turned to her directly. I'm not here to ask, I said. I'm here to finish what you started. No one spoke. I left the room without waiting for a reply. Some wars are won not in shouts, but in the absence of denial. By that evening, I was back in my suite when Alyssa appeared with her laptop. You need to see this. She turned the screen toward me. A shaky but clear video filmed from someone's phone in the boardroom was already making rounds on social media. My voice, crisp and cutting, filled the clip. I'm not here to ask. I'm here to finish what you started. The title of the post, The Other Carter Sister. Truth isn't a blade, it's acid, and now it's eating through everything they built. Sophie's face was a frozen mask of arrogance and panic as the news anchor narrated her downfall. I sat in my office, arms folded, watching the footage unfold on every major network. The video looped her stepping out of a luxury sedan in heels too high for humility, caught off guard as two federal agents approached her. Ms. Walsh. She turned. You've been served. The camera didn't flinch. The envelope trembled in her hand. I muted the television. Alyssa walked in with a printed folder. The media cycle is going nuclear. Forbes, Bloomberg, local outlets, everyone's circling. I didn't answer. I just looked out at the skyline. Below, the city moved as if nothing had changed. But up here, I could feel the axis shift. Daniel called. I didn't expect to hear from him today. She's gone, he said without greeting. Sophie packed 3 bags and disappeared. Driver says she's headed to a private airstrip. She's running. Robert, I asked. He left yesterday. Some house upstate near the lake. No phone, no press. I think he knew this was coming. I hung up. 2 hours later, I sat in a studio chair under hot lights, staring down a lens. The interviewer smiled nervously. Thank you for being here, Ms. Walsh. I didn't come to talk about family, I said. I came to talk about accountability. We went live. Every word was measured, every answer shaped with precision, not to wound, but to expose. I didn't gloat. I didn't throw punches. I let the truth speak, quiet and corrosive. Afterward, I returned to my office. Alyssa was waiting, eyes wide, holding a sealed drive. From the old IT manager, she said. He decrypted the rest. You need to see this. I opened the files. Decades of tax filings, some clean, others doctored. Most damning proof Robert had funneled company bonuses through a personal shell entity, altering ledgers and forging dates. My breath caught. In a single spreadsheet, I saw names of employees Robert had laid off while skimming their benefits. I saw hospital reimbursements denied, retirement plans stolen, Linda called that night. I let it go to voicemail, then listened. Her voice was faint. They're saying things on the news. I don't know what's real anymore. Your father won't talk to me. Claire, I just wanted peace. I remembered what she once told me. There's nothing more painful than being seen for who you really are. Maybe that was true, but I had no pity left. I held the hard drive in my lap, the metal warm from the processor, and whispered, "This isn't revenge. It's inheritance." I turned to Alyssa. "We'll need a forensic audit team. I want every shell, every wire transfer, every offshore account, especially the Caymans." She nodded, then froze. Her laptop blinked with a new message. No sender, no header. Just a line of text, bold and pulsing. "Check the Cayman wire transfers. Start with 2016. She vanished before the house caught fire. Classic Sophie. That morning, I stared at the portfolio of digital court filings stacked on my encrypted tablet. The IRS had officially frozen 3 of Walsh & Coer's subsidiary accounts. Erica's voice crackled through the speaker as she read the confirmation aloud. "This isn't just a slap on the wrist anymore," she said. "This is decapitation." I nodded but said nothing. Not yet. A second email arrived, subject line settlement proposal. Claire Walsh. I tapped it open. 7 zeros. Clean NDA. Mutual non-disparagement. They wanted my silence back. The irony made me laugh out loud. Linda called in the middle of it all. Her voice trembled. "You win, Claire. Please. Just leave something intact." Define intact. "Mom," I said, pacing the edge of my office, "do you mean the house that's already rotting from the inside, or the silence that let it fester?" "I mean us," she whispered. "There's no them anymore. Just you and me. And I don't even know if I have you left." I said nothing. I wanted to scream, but grief had dulled even that. She hung up first. Later that evening, I drove alone to the house we used to call home. It looked smaller now, not just in size, but in presence. The hedge out front was overgrown, the driveway cracked from frost. Inside, the air was stale, thick with old wood and faded expectations. I wandered through the dim hallways, trailing my fingers along the ridges of memory. My old bedroom was stripped bare, but on the top shelf of the linen closet behind an old shoebox, I found a yellowed envelope with my name in slanted cursive. Inside was a single-page letter. "Claire, I've watched you carry strength that frightened even me. I let them turn you into a stranger because it was easier than standing next to someone who wouldn't break. I wasn't brave, but I knew you were. Forgive me if you can. Mom." I read it twice. I didn't cry. I just folded it back, carefully slipped it into my coat pocket, and walked out the front door. The door clicked shut behind me like a vault sealing the past. The rooftop of my building in Manhattan was cold that night. Wind tugged at my coat. Below, the lights of the city pulsed like a restless heart. I stood there alone, staring down at the world I had clawed my way into, wondering if it would still want me after I lit everything behind me on fire. A buzz from my phone broke the silence. It was a news alert. Robert Carter detained in Geneva. I was born into their name. Today, I bury it. The air in the hotel ballroom was sharp with anticipation, camera lenses clicking into focus, voices murmuring like a gathering storm. A long table with microphones waited for me. The Walsh name had been printed on a dozen press packets, but not the way it used to be. This time, it came with footnotes and footfalls of justice, of reckoning. I adjusted the lapel of my charcoal blazer and stepped forward, the hush sweeping through the room like a wave. Alyssa was already there, eyes steady behind her glasses. Erica stood beside her, composed as always, her folders crisp and color-coded. Daniel sat in the back, no longer part of the spectacle, just a quiet presence, maybe witness, maybe ghost. I faced the rows of cameras. "I'm Claire Walsh," I began. For years, I was asked to remain silent for family, for legacy, for appearances. Today, I speak because the silence was built on theft, intimidation, and rot. The screen behind me lit up with flowcharts, account trails, excerpts of internal memos. I laid them out one by one: how Sophie used shell vendors, how Robert manipulated board votes, how they redirected family trust funds into private holdings offshore. The evidence unfolded not like a bomb, but like a scalpel, precise, deliberate, surgical. A reporter in the front row raised her hand. "Ms. Walsh? Some say this is revenge." I smiled faintly. "It's not. I was born into inheritance, but I chose a different one I could live with." The room stilled. I continued. "This isn't about tearing down a name. It's about freeing everyone it was used to bind employees, clients, even family." Another voice called out, "Where is your sister today?" I paused, letting the silence speak louder than any answer. Toward the back, I noticed Daniel shift. One of the photographers turned to him. "And you are?" Daniel straightened his jacket and replied without hesitation. "She's my boss." The flashbulbs clicked like fireworks. A few people laughed. Most didn't know how to process the shift. I did. I'd lived it. I closed my remarks. The Walsh name once meant control. Now it will mean consequence. Thank you. I didn't wait for applause. I didn't need it. I stepped down from the podium and walked past the reporters as the questions erupted behind me. Names, figures, motivations, alliances. Let them argue over the ashes. In the car, Alyssa handed me her phone. "Email just came in," she said. "You'll want to see it." The subject line read, "Appointment Consideration, Federal Corporate Oversight Committee." The message was brief. "We believe your experience is not just valuable, but essential. Let us know if you're willing to lead." Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simply replaces the name on the door. The light was pale and clean, the kind of Boston morning that smelled like fresh beginnings and dry ink. I stood outside the new office space, brick modest but strong. There was no ribbon-cutting ceremony, no press, just me, a logo on the glass door, and the sound of the city stretching awake. Claire and Carter Advisory, not Walsh. Never again. I ran my hand over the smooth lettering. My name, my terms. No inheritance, no permission. Just earned weight. Just the truth. Inside, everything was crisp, unfinished desks, polished floors, a box of unopened folders on the welcome table. Alyssa had arrived earlier than I did, of course. She walked out of the side hallway holding a ring of office keys like they were ceremonial. "You sure you want your name first?" she asked, gently, teasing. I nodded. "I'm sure." She handed them over, then offered a crooked grin. "It's yours now. All of it." My phone buzzed. A voice message from Erica. "You didn't just expose them," she said, calm and proud, in my ear. "You replaced them, and you did it without turning into them." I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the words settle. Alyssa waved, heading out for her own weekend. "You've got mail," she said on her way. Desk by the window. The envelope was cream-colored, unsealed. The handwriting my mother's. "Claire, I won't ask forgiveness, but I see you now. And maybe that's the most I'm capable of. You were always more Walsh than we deserved. Linda." It didn't sting. Not like before. I folded the letter, slowly placed it into the drawer, and stared out the window. Boston looked the same, but I didn't. A second envelope lay beneath the first. No handwriting. Just a typed note. "If you ever need a CFO. D." I smiled, not wide, not triumphant. Just honest. Maybe I wouldn't need him. Maybe I would. But the choice was finally mine. A soft knock on the glass broke my thoughts. A man stood there, late 50s, carrying a leather briefcase and a guarded expression. "Are you open?" he asked when I cracked the door. "Officially, yes." He stepped inside, handed over a file. "It's a family firm. Old money. Looks clean." until you dig. I glanced at the first page: offshore holdings, employee settlements, internal reshuffling. He didn't know my history. He didn't have to. He just needed someone who knew how to take a legacy apart without leaving fingerprints. I held the folder, felt its weight. And for the first time in years, I wasn't carrying mine. "Let's begin," I said. They tried to erase me behind closed doors. I opened those doors and let the world watch. Justice didn't arrive in sirens or headlines. It came on quiet paper, in resignation letters, in names stripped from walls. When injustice is met with unwavering courage, the final verdict can echo through a lifetime. Sometimes reclaiming your voice is the loudest form of revenge. If this story resonated with you, like, share, and comment your thoughts below. Type 1 if you felt seen, type 2 if you're still waiting for justice.